film! Hey! You gotta get the film back home, Alan! Get to the film! Get to the film!
Hello folks, how's it going? I've got a little treat for you today. 3 of the most disturbing films ever made. I say that like a question, because it is a question. Tell me what you think the 3 most disturbing films you've ever seen are in the comments below. This is hopefully going to be a 10-part series, so 30 disturbing films in total for those of you who, like me, don't do math good. Let's just get straight into this one, as it's going to be my longest upload yet, and we don't want any faffing about now, do we? At the end of the series, I'll be uploading an 11th video on where I rank the whole 30, as I'm not doing them in any particular order, so you can look forward to that, I guess. I've saved the best one in my opinion out of the 3 in this video until last, so I hope you stick around for that one. But if you can't be bothered to listen to me rattle on about a film that you don't like, don't worry, I put timestamps in the description below. You're welcome. He says in an empty room, staring at a laptop screen, wondering why he didn't make better life choices. So anyway, film number 1, Cannibal Holocaust.
Hey! You gotta get the film back home, Alan! Get to the film! Get to the film!
There's a bloody good reason that I've put this one as the first video in this series, and that's because in my opinion, it's probably one of the most deplorable. Cannibal Holocaust, to be fair, was geniusly marketed for a start, with the director literally making the main cast go into hiding after filming, so everyone genuinely thought they were all dead. He was actually taken to court about the legitimacy of their survival and had to prove legally, in a court of law, that they were all still alive. I mean, they were, but imagine if one of them had died from natural causes or something. How would he explain that one away? Bonus for him, they're all still alive. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for the numerous animals that were mercilessly executed for no good reason just to make this film. From monkeys, snakes, spiders, a pig and a fucking turtle, any animal was game just so this film could have the ultimate shock factor, which, to be fair, is disgusting in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I eat meat, but I certainly wouldn't think it was acceptable to kill an animal for some clout. Luca Magnotta springs to mind. The whole premise of the film is about a group of filmmakers who go to supposedly study cannibalistic tribes in the Amazon rainforest. They seem to have not returned for a little over 2 months, and a rescue ensues led by Harold, an anthropologist at NYU. Military personnel that are stationed in the rainforest decide that it's a good idea to shoot a load of the indigenous Yakumo people and take one as a hostage to barter with in regard to the whereabouts of the missing film crew. When Harold arrives, they agree on the release of their captive in exchange for being taken to the Yakumo village in a very odd display of Miguel, who is the guide, Checo's assistant, getting butt naked and shouting nonsense while having poisonous darts shot at his feet. This seems to work though, and they're escorted to a village where the Yakumo seem to be very uneasy about their arrival. It'll become clear why in a bit, but let's just say it's not cool. The next day, they travel deeper into the rainforest and save a small tribe of Yanomamo from death. Well, most of them anyway, and get invited back to their village as a sign of gratitude. There's a weird fucking scene next where Monroe bathes naked to gain the tribe's trust, and a group of very, very young looking girls runs out from the tall grass by the riverbank and start pulling on his ding dong while he grapples with them. I have no words for this, so we're gonna move on from it. He eagerly chases them away from the riverbank and finds the remains of the previous film crew and their cameras. That evening, they witness a ritualistic killing of one of the tribe's warriors because apparently he was a little bitch, and Monroe records the shaman's voice chanting with his voice recorder. The tribe think that Monroe was able to trap the shaman's voice in his box, and in exchange agreed to trade it with the film reels from the deceased film crew. Returning to New York, Monroe goes on TV and announces there is going to be a documentary made about the recovered films, but insists that he sees the raw footage before making a decision about it being made or not. One of the execs shows him some gory footage of the last film the film crew made and tells him that it was all fake. Genuinely think that this was the director telling the audience, even though he had advertised this as real lost footage, that this was actually just a film too. It's quite a nice little touch actually. The review of the raw footage commences, which consists of the team's journey through the jungle to make contact with the Yakumo. On their way, their guide, Felipe, is bitten by a venomous snake that was trying to hitch a ride in his boot, and the group hack his leg off with a machete and cauterize the wound with the same machete that they heat up by putting in their campfire. Not too surprisingly, Felipe ends up dying from this traumatic experience, so the group cover him up with a bunch of leaves and carry on their way. They find a small group of Yakumo and shoot one in the leg so he is slow enough to follow them back to his village. Sure, less violent ways could have been used to the same effect, but from what is about to happen, I'm not surprised that they decided to do this. They arrive at the village and proceed to intimidate the inhabitants, killing a child's defenseless little pig by shooting it in the face, rounding them all up into a hut to burn it to the ground, with them all inside to stage it like a massacre, just for their film. At this point, I was starting to think to myself that they didn't have the best intentions upon discovering where this tribe lived. Back to Monroe, and he explains that he is not happy about this documentary being aired, as he has actually seen all of the raw footage and proceeds to subject the executives to this, to try and persuade them to change their minds. He plays the final two reels, the first of which starts with the brutal assault of a very young Yanomamo girl, where the three males of the film crew take it in turns assaulting her. They later find her impaled upright on a wooden pole and say the Yanomamo have done this for her losing her virginity, although from what we know about this group of filmmakers, they probably killed her themselves and just staged it as another piece of footage for their documentary. The group are attacked by the tribe as the result in vengeance for what they have done to this poor girl, and as they are surrounded, Jack takes a spear to the heart and Alan shoots him because he's already done for apparently. Mark then films the tribe castrating Jack and dismembering him with a machete. Alan, Mark and Faye all get lost trying to escape, are soon surrounded once more by the tribe. Alan shoots a few flares into the forest, but at this point the Yanomamo are past giving two fucks. Faye is captured, dragged off, assaulted repeatedly by male members of the tribe, and then beaten to death with sticks and beheaded. Mark and Alan are then beaten to death too. The film ends with the executives ordering the destruction of the footage, while we as an audience are left to ponder who the real villains of the film were. Personally, I think it's the executives for wanting to glorify such footage, and as is repeated throughout the film, the filmmakers were doing this to get rich and famous and nothing more. If we, as the public and the executives, didn't make such a want and need for things like this, they probably wouldn't have done it in the first place. But at the same time, they did do it, so it's on them too. The last people I think that are evil in this film were the indigenous people. They were just living their lives in their homes and wanted to be left alone. I'm going to rank each of these disturbing films on 3 categories, and for the last video in the series, the 11th videos, I'm going to compile all the scores and list them from the most disturbing to not quite so most disturbing. So the 3 categories are disturbingness. Disturbingness? Is that? Yeah, I'm using it. I don't know if it's a word or not. Disturbingness. Yep, well there we go. Disturbingness, 8 out of 10. The assault scenes and general torment of the indigenous tribe is pretty disturbing in this film, but there is worse to come in my opinion in this list, hence the 8 out of 10. Gore, 10 out of 10. The animal cruelty was evident in this film, and real. That's why this one gets a 10. Storyline, 9 out of 10. A compelling and realistic storyline. The more realistic, the more believable. The more believable, the more disturbing. So 9 out of 10 for that one. So we're off to a strong start, 27 out of 30. If you agree or disagree with this, let me know in the comments. I'm very interested in everyone else's opinion on these films too. But now, off to film 2, a Serbian film. As a quick overview, Milos is a retired adult film actor and takes a job that will set him and his family up for the rest of their lives as he is struggling with money. He's told that this is an art film, only to realise that it is something much worse, a word that rhymes with buff film. He is lured into performing ever more deprived and violent sexual acts with devastating effects both for the participants of the film and his own family. From a graphic beheading under the most bizarre circumstances, to having to perform certain acts in front of a little girl, to being okay with his I don't know how old son. Hang on a sec, let's just Google search it. 6? What the fuck? Oh, okay, I was going to say it was about 8, maybe 10. I thought that was bad, but 6? Jesus Christ. Okay, 2. Well, Milo's being okay with his 6-year-old son watching a porno with him in. Like his dad, not the kid, obviously. This film is pretty disturbing. I think the integration of children into this already dark topic elevates that somewhat. This film is banned in quite a few countries, even to this day, including the Philippines, Spain, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia, and Norway, and had to have heavy cuts enacted on it to be released in the UK and US. To this day, it is considered by a large majority of people online to be the most disturbing film ever made. Want to know why? Cool. Let's start then. As previously mentioned, Milos is a semi-retired porn star who lives with his wife and his 6-year-old son. A former co-star gets in touch with him after an offer of a job that will set him up for the rest of his life. He goes to meet the eccentric director of this art film called Vukmir to get some details on what will be expected of him and vice versa. Without any information regarding what the film is about though, Milos is lured in by the money and just signs the contract anyway. Filming starts at an orphanage where a young girl is being told off by her mother and then gets slapped in the face. Milos is led into a room where a young girl sits on a chair sucking on an ice lolly while Milos gets some head. So we're already off to a pretty fucked up start, but don't worry, it gets a hell of a lot worse. The next thing Milos witnesses is Vukmir showing him a video of his art film styles. This consists of a woman giving birth to a newborn, obviously, and then it being subjected to an assault by the man who delivered the baby. I've seen some people online contesting that there is actually no assault on this baby, and all I can think of is that they have seen the cut version version because it definitely happens. Vukmir calls this art newborn porn. Lovely. What a nice guy. Milos wakes up some 4 days later, covered in blood and absolutely no memory of what's happened. Returning to the set for answers, Milos discovers several tapes showing that he had been drugged with something they call Viagra for balls, which made him highly aroused and very aggressive. He watches himself attack, assault and behead the girl's mother who was eating the ice lolly. His ex-co-star then has her teeth removed with pliers after voicing her concern about what Vukmir is doing, and then a man forces his ding-dong down her throat and chokes her to death with it. Lovely. Milos is attacked by 2 thugs after escaping from a window and saved by the guy who took part in the previous newborn porn. Milos is drugged again, but overpowers the woman who is administering the drugs and ends up injecting her too. He is led to a separate room with 2 bodies hidden under a sheet, and he is told to assault the bodies whilst another man, who is actually Milos's brother, enters and joins in the assault too. The 2 bodies are revealed to be his own son, who Milos is assaulting, and Milos's wife, who his brother is assaulting. The doctor he stuck in the neck with the syringe enters, covered in blood from between her legs, and is holding a bloodied metal pipe in her hand, insinuating that she has just shoved it up herself, being all crazy horny like Milos has been, and then she collapses and dies from blood loss from her hoo-ha. Milos then attacks Vukmir and kills him by smashing his head repeatedly into the concrete floor. Milos's wife bites his brother's throat out, killing him. Then Milos kills the newborn porn guy by shoving his ding-dong through his eyeball. Disturbed yet? Good. Milos and his wife then decide to die with their son. They all lay in bed together and Milos shoots each of them. The camera then pans out the next day to a film crew standing in their bedroom, and one of the guys is unzipping his trousers to assault the dead bodies, being told to start with the little one. This is fucking... what the fuck am I doing? And we're finished with that one. Thank fuck. Some people will disagree with this being the most disturbing film, citing ones like Martyrs or Salo above this, and don't get me wrong, I agree. Those are both most up films too, and they will be included in these lists in this series, so keep an eye out for them. But I mean, come on, you cannot deny from what I just told you as a general plot guide, definitely no mean in depth whatsoever, but this film is fucked. It's gory, it's messed up, and I can see why it had to be cut to shit for its release. The uncut version is something else, that's sure. If you ever get a chance to watch it, don't. So anyway, ratings for this one. Disturbingness, 9 out of 10. The whole premise of this film is just creepy and nasty, and as I said before, the direct involvement of children into these kinds of topics makes it just so much worse. Gore, 9 out of 10. The gore is pretty consistent throughout, although some of it is somewhat unbelievable. It's still pretty nasty, hence the 9 and not the 10. Storyline, 9 out of 10. It's a fucked up storyline, let's be honest. One that could be conceived as quite viable too, like given all we know about dodgy parts of the internet and stuff like that. I could see this being something that could actually genuinely happen. Not exactly like this, obviously, but to a certain degree. So that's another 27 out of 30. A very respectful score once again. So let me know if you agree or disagree with this decision in the comments below. I'm just going to move straight on to our third and final film though. I'm just going to move on to the third and final film for this episode of the 30 most disturbing horror films ever made, and that is Eden Lake. I said I was saving my favourite till last for this video, and here it is. Eden Lake. You probably think I'm mad for liking this one the best, and I'm not saying it's the most disturbing, it's just my favourite out of the 3. It's set in England, so I'm already biased. I think some real gritty English films are made here, and this one is no exception, and it's set only about a 40-minute drive away from where I live, which makes it even more relatable. And when I was a rebellious little chav some 20-something years ago, I used to actually know some people who I could probably relate to at the time, being somewhat like a few of the characters that are actually in this film. I guess that's probably why I enjoyed it so much, just because it is so relatable. There is one scene, and when we get to it I'll let you know. When watching this with my ex-wife about 13 years ago, there was a part that genuinely really affected her. It's pretty fucked up, to be fair, but as I said, I'll let you know when that comes up. Anyway, onwards. So we are introduced to these 2 happy-go-lucky lovers, and they're off to Eden Lake for the weekend before it's transformed into a gated community so they can enjoy the unspoiled scenery. This is also the time that Steve, the main character's character here, is going to propose to his girlfriend, Jenny. Steve is a whiny little bitch on the way there, talking about how unruly children of today are and blames their parents for not parenting their children. Oh, Steve, if only you knew, mate. Anyway, they set up camp by the lake and are quickly and rudely greeted by a bunch of yobs just out to cause trouble after a few typically British insults get thrown around.
She's a bitch.
The yobs leave. The next day, Steve and Jenny go to a local cafe for some breakfast because all their food's gone manky, and ask the waitress if she knows of a group of children that are up to no good travelling around on their bikes. She clearly does know who these children are, but insists on denying any of them being her children. On their way back to the campsite, they notice a load of the kids' bikes outside a house, and Steve decides the best course of action here is to break into the house, almost to be discovered by their ringleader's dad when he unexpectedly returns from work. Steve just about manages to get out of the house without being caught, and they return to the lake. Steve goes for a little scuba and is about to propose when he notices that their bag with his keys, wallet and phone is missing. Their Range Rover has been stolen, and so have to start the long walk back into town. Later that night, whilst walking through the forest, they stumble across the gang, and after Steve threatens them, they all pull knives out on him. A fight ensues, culminating with Steve getting one of the knives off of the kids and stabbing the ringleader, Brett's dog. He's a bit miffed by this, and after throwing Steve's belongings at him, tells the gang to chase him down. Steve ends up crashing his Range Rover and getting pinned into the driver's seat by a huge branch that has smashed through the window, and he tells his wife to bugger off and go get some help. She doesn't do this though, and opts to spend the rest of the night hidden under a bush behind a tree. She locates the gang the next morning, only to find they have Steve tied to a tree stump with barbed wire. Ouch. Brett then tells each member of the gang to stab Steve, which they do, some willingly and some not, but all to great effect, that's for sure. Paige, the female gang member, records this attack on her phone so Brett can use it as blackmail if one of them do not comply with his later orders. After Jenny distracts the group, Steve manages to break free, but is in a really bad state from having a Stanley blade stuck in his mouth and jiggled about, causing his tongue to be shredded to pieces, to a couple of extremely deep puncture wounds near his liver. It is evident that he is slowly bleeding to death. Jenny manages to find him and tries to patch him up the best she can, but let's be honest, these are lost cause at this point. He goes into shock and she leaves him under a bunch of leaves and promises to return with help. Jenny encounters a young kid her and Steve met near the beginning of the film by the lake, and he tells the gang where they are. They knock Jenny out and then tie her to her now dead boyfriend to a tree stump surrounded by wood and pour petrol all over him. They then set Steve alight, but Jenny manages to flee when the ropes are burned and she struggles free. Brett grabs Adam, the snitch, and necklaces him. If you don't know what that is, let me explain. So a tyre is placed around the person's neck, petrol is poured onto the tyre is then set alight, resulting in the person having a rather agonising death either by the burns themselves or suffocation. This is the part I was talking about at the beginning that stuck with my ex. It's this screaming when Adam's head is set on fire. Don't worry, I'll play it for you now. You're welcome for that. She could not get that noise out of her head for weeks, and apparently it pops up from time to time with no warning. Unfortunate for her, I guess. Jenny finds one of the kids from the gang alone and stabs him in the neck with a piece of glass, killing him, obviously. Brett finds his kid and beats another one of the gang members to death in a fit of rage. Paige runs away, but gets mowed down by Jenny, who stole the van of the brother of the kid she just killed, presumably killing her too. She manages to drive back to town and finds a house where a party is happening and screams for them all to help her before collapsing in the garden. One of the parents gets a phone call and she quickly informs the rest of the partygoers about the deaths of a few of their kids. They quickly realise that Jenny is involved in these killings, and upon Brett's return home, he confirms it is her. She locks herself in the bathroom, only to have the door kicked in, and then she tries to escape, but Brett's dad and a few of the other guys choke Jenny and drag her back into the bathroom. And whilst her screams of terror emanate through the house, the film ends with Brett looking into his mirror with dead Steve's sunglasses on, smiling to himself at a job well done. You're a fucking psycho, mate. I love it. If you get a chance, I would really recommend watching this one. It's definitely my favourite film out of these three. It's relatable, it's close to my home, it draws specific attention to the despondence to violence of children brought up around it on a daily basis, and I think it really rings true with some unfortunately underfunded and let down parts of our English society, and demonstrates the vicious cycle that these communities can end up in as a result. But anyway, ratings for this one. Disturbingness, 8 out of 10. As I've said, it's close to home and very relatable, mirroring parts of our society with a scary accuracy, but also obviously not as disturbing as some of the others that will be listed. Gore, 8 out of 10. Although not a huge amount of gore, it is incredibly realistic, and the nature of the infliction makes it a well-deserved 8, I think. Storyline, 10 out of 10. It's totally relatable. From Steve wanting to be the people must speak up guy to where that kind of attitude gets him, and the grittiness portrayed by the teenage gang members and the culmination of events and what it leads up to, I just absolutely love it. So a total of 26 out of 30, which, considering the kind of films that are actually on this list and how overly disturbing some of them are, this is a really respectable score for this film. So anyway, that concludes the first 3 most disturbing horror films ever made. So as I said at the beginning, this is hopefully going to be a 10-part series with the results in a final 11th episode. Let me know if I should continue with the series. I'm going to really enjoy doing it. I've got to admit, I've got 35 disturbing films at the moment, and I'm in the process of slowly trying to eliminate 5 of them. The 5 that do get eliminated, I will feature very briefly, though, in the final 11th episode. Hopefully you guys like this and we managed to get that final video out. So look out for the next one in the 30 most disturbing horror films of all time series. And to make sure you don't miss it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.
Hey! You gotta get the film back home, Alan! Get to the film! Get to the film!